want to I do want to remind all members of your duty to avoid conflicts of interest under the State Ethics Act. And at this point, I'm going to see whether there are any known conflicts of interest with respect to any matters coming before the commission. And seeing none, we'll move forward with our first item of business, which will be to approve the draft September 11th, 2024 meeting minutes. Had a chance to review those. Okay, if there are no changes or corrections, I will. Then do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Deerhag, thank you. And a second. Thank you, Commissioner Tweedy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I've lost Commissioner Carter, but he is present.
He voted yes, I heard him.
Did you hear him? Okay, all opposed? Okay, the minutes stand approved. At this time, I'd like to welcome Acting Director of the Department of Environmental Quality, Mary Penny Kelly, to come to the podium.
Hi, thank you for letting me come in and take a few minutes of your time. Just wanted to come in and say hello, a few new faces on this committee, so good to see you all. And just wanted to thank you for your service, both to the environmental issues you have before you and to the state of North Carolina. This is a very tough time. I know my staff is being pulled in a lot of different directions, and interbasin transfers is one of those things we can't just let go. So I'm glad you're looking at that, as well as the 2G rules today. And I know the presentations will be good, had a little bit of a preview. So, but I wanted to particularly thank you for all the time you spend in reviewing our materials, listening to our staff, and coming to really good decisions on how to balance competing interests for environment. So with that, I'll be addressing the full commission tomorrow with a little bit more detail on Helene, which is on top of mind for a lot of people. But again, thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. Now, let's see, we'll go to our first action item. That is going to be a request to proceed to the EMC full commission with the 2024 periodic review of certain rules in 15A and CAC 2G. And I'll welcome Karen Higgins of the Division of Water Resources.
All right, good morning. Karen Higgins, Division of Water Resources. Let me go ahead and get started. So the periodic review is required by statute to be completed every 10 years. You all have done other rules with the commission, the full commission, but this is the first set coming through the Water Allocation Committee. So we're at the first step, which is the agency review. Then there's a RRC review, and finally it's reviewed by a legislative committee. So the step that we're at right now is to place rules into one of two buckets: unnecessary and necessary rules. Unnecessary rules are obsolete or redundant, otherwise not needed. Necessary rules are anything that is not unnecessary. We put together a draft bucket list. We send that out to public comment, and then you all will finalize the report and send that to the RRC. The RRC prepares the final report and sends that to the legislature. Once the legislature meets and approves the report or does not meet, the report becomes final. Once the report's final, then we work with the RRC to establish a readoption deadline for any necessary rules. So that'll come later in the process. So you all will have two subchapters come through the Water Allocation Committee: the O2G rules and the O2E rules, and this is the timeline for both of those. So there are 7 rules in O2G. There were more rules in O2G previously. Some of those rules have been repealed over time. Others have been transferred to different subchapters. So there's just this one section left in O2G with 7 rules. They're all proposed to be categorized as necessary. So here's the timeline. As mentioned, we're here today to request to proceed to the EMC. We would go to the EMC in January. then file for the public comment period to begin. We won't be coming back to the EMC until July. The RRC due date is July 18th for their review in August. This is our timeline. And with that, I'm requesting approval to proceed to the EMC with the proposed periodic review of rules report for O2G. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do any of the members of the committee have questions for Ms. Higgins? Ms. Higgins, I'm going to ask you to just pause one moment and
Yep.
make sure that, yeah.
You so far.
Okay, all right. We have some members who have had to step out, so I don't want to proceed without a quorum.
You're 4 of 7.
Who's the fourth? Okay, okay. All right, then if there are no questions, would any of the members who are present like to make a motion? Commissioner Tweedy.
Take a shot at it.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to move that the committee approve to proceed to the full EMC with the proposed periodic review of rules report with 2G.
Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Deerhake. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll proceed to the EMC. Thank you, Ms. Higgins. We do have some information items. We're going to have a presentation from Harold Brady, and while he's coming up, Lois has asked me to make an announcement that everyone needs to meet with IT folks out here in one of these conference rooms outside the hearing room today to get your new email account set up. They will be there between 11 and 1. So please try to find a time to get in there and let them do what they need to do to make your new email address go live. Okay. Now we'll move on to our information item, which is an IBT update from Harold Brady. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, this is Harold. I'm Harold Brady. I'm the Water Supply Development Coordinator with the Division of Water Resources. Going to give a interbasin transfer update. Been doing these now pretty regularly now for about a year at every Water Allocation Committee meeting. And yeah, this one, yeah, it has some new information. So let's jump into it here. I'll be first talking about, there's 3 interbasin transfers that are working through the process right now. There's the town of Mooresville's request, Charlotte Water, and the town of Fuquay-Varina. So tackling the newest one of the 3 first, the town of Mooresville. They are moving water, they're proposing to move water from the Catawba Basin over to the Rocky Basin, Rocky and South Yadkin. There is a pre-existing allowance. You'll hear terms, I mean, you use the term pre-existing allowance, you'll hear the term grandfather, you'll also hear the term legacy. They all mean the same thing. And that amount that they're allowed to transfer right now is 8 million gallons a day based on an average day max month. That is what the capacity of the system was to transfer water when the statute was passed in 1993. So that's what sets that limit. They are looking at 30-year demands of needing to transfer 12.6 million gallons a day. I say this regularly when we're at this early stage in the process. We're still in this notice of intent stage that number, the requested IBT number, it always changes. When we finally get that EA or EIS document where there's a deeper dive into what the demands are, that number nearly always changes up or down. But this gives us a good sense of what they're thinking. So we are in the middle of public meetings right now. We had one last Thursday in Mooresville. I thought it went well. and we had one last night in Hickory. That one went well as well. We're doing these more of what's called a town hall or an open house style, where there's a time, the time between 4 and 7, you can just drop in and walk around and field questions from the experts on this, on the subject on that. So certainly myself and Linwood were there, but we have the utilities directors there. We have the consultants who are working with them. So able to really answer technical questions, both sort of high level and, lower level questions for the folks that are coming in. These meetings are, so far, I would say the attendance is more typical of what we see at this stage of the notice of intent for other projects coming through. So there were, I believe, a half dozen people at the Mooresville meeting, and there were about 10 people last night in Hickory that came in. So tomorrow night, the show moves to Monroe. And you can see on this map here, I wanted to show this map to get a sense of where these public meetings are held in the basins, because that is part of the statute, that you have to have these meetings. You have to have a couple of meetings in the source basin. You need to have a meeting in the receiving basin. And so tomorrow night's meeting will be in the Rocky Basin, the receiving basin. And then we have next Tuesday, we'll be in Lancaster, South Carolina, and we've been coordinating with South Carolina DES pretty considerably. They will be present at that meeting to also field questions from folks in South Carolina wanting to speak directly to their environmental agency staff on what their feelings are on this. And then a final meeting also in Mooresville, but in a different part of town than Mooresville than where we had it last Thursday. That one will be over in the South Yadkin Basin. The South Yadkin it's part of the service area, so there is some consumptive loss in that basin. That's a transfer from the Catawba. Their intake, I don't think I mentioned this earlier, their intake is in Lake Norman, which is in the Catawba Basin. There was a star on the, go back to this one. There's a star beside the Hickory, North Carolina meeting, the one that occurred last night. And this was kind of, I pulled this right out of some of the materials that the town of Mooresville created, that they wanted to make it known that due to the issues in Western North Carolina, that they are working to secure an additional meeting in the Hickory-Morganton area, if needed, to ensure that those folks, their voices will be heard, in the Upper Catawba particularly is a concern. So as I mentioned before, all the meetings are held in an open house style, and folks can kind of come in and walk through. There are poster boards throughout the meeting room that walk you through from what the IBT process is into what the different alternatives that they're looking at evaluating at this stage in the process, and how they can comment and have their voice heard properly. Also here, I know that there are places where you email comments and mail them. And then there's a couple of links here, both to DEQ website that anytime there's an IBT request come through, we have a little website that goes through, that has pertinent materials, as well as the town of Mooresville has their own website for more information. So where they are in the process, as I mentioned, they are early on, they issued their notice of intent back first week of September, I believe it was. So once they have these series of meetings complete, then they'll move into the next phase, and that's development of an environmental document. For this project, it'll be an environmental impact statement, and that usually takes about a year and a half to produce a document like that. Any questions on Mooresville? Great. So let's move on to Charlotte Water. They're a little further along in the process. I want to make it clear a difference here. Mooresville, this is the full certificate process. They do not have a certificate right now. They have a pre-existing allowance, but if they want to exceed that, then they'll need to get a new certificate. So they have to go through the full process. Charlotte, Charlotte is a modification. So it's a little bit more of a truncated process because you're modifying an existing certificate. They got their original certificate back in, I believe it was 02, 01, 02 in that time frame. And so their existing certificate is for 33 million gallons a day, moving water from the Catawba to the Rocky basins. And they're using the number 63, as I mentioned before. That is a placeholder that when the EIS, deeper dive during the EIS document is conducted, that number will be refined. And where they are in the process, so they've completed their series of public meetings. They did those starting in May, and they ran all the way into July. A series of public meetings throughout the basin and into South Carolina. And so now they are, by the process, they're moving more into the environmental document phase. This says they would do an EA. They are doing an EIS, and that is compelled by the settlement agreement between North Carolina and South Carolina. They would have to do an environmental impact statement. Prior to really starting on that environmental impact statement, I understand they're going to have a series of stakeholder engagement meetings. I've mentioned these in this forum before. And those have a little bit of additional information. So there's some multiple meetings anticipated to start around mid-December of this year. And it will be comprised of regional subject matter experts, regulatory staff, and other pertinent stakeholders. I understand some people have been selected, but I don't know any details on that. Yep, and then here's a timeline slide. So right now we're into there's the engagement stakeholder workshops there in fall of 2024. And then they'll be working diligently on the environmental impact statement. As I showed with Mooresville, here are some links to click on, a little more information. Does anybody have any questions on Charlotte Water's request for a modified IBT certificate?
I was just going to say, I think I might have asked this before, but Mooresville and Charlotte are both requesting to transfer additional water from Catawba to the Rocky Basin and on similar timeframes. So are those kind of things considered in tandem in the environmental impact assessment?
They will be included in the hydrologic model,
Okay.
what their plans are. And so the impacts would presumably then be shown, but the process it's shown in that environment in the hydrologic model, and that's the tool that really kind of provides what impacts will be to flows
Okay, so
upstream,
they're
downstream.
considering what's going on in the surrounding.
They will be considering what's going on together. I want to be clear here that they are two very separate processes. One entity already has a certificate and they need to modify it, and the other entity perhaps needs to get a new certificate. So there will likely be an alternative where we're looking at minimizing by maybe working together to move water, and how that would work. That's for the alternative analysis to go into. So I would expect that as an alternative, but they are two very separate processes.
Do you have a question?
She got my question.
Okay, all right. Any other questions at this time? All right.
All right, thank you. So we'll jump into the last one, the town of Fuquay-Varina. Their requested IBT. This would be a new certificate as well. So they have to, they're going through the full IBT process. We are still working with them on developing a draft environmental impact statement that will go out to the public. I would say tentatively looking at the first quarter of this coming year, that would be sent out through the state clearinghouse to regulatory agencies, as well as the general public and water systems and other stakeholders for their comments on the project. They're looking at about 6 MGD from the draft EIS for the transfer, and that's a transfer from the Cape Fear to the Noose through from the Sanford water treatment plant to the Terrible Creek wastewater treatment plant in Fuquay. And there will be some consumptive loss as well in the service area, both in the Noose and the Cape Fear side of their service area. Their service area, as you can see in this map here, really straddles that basin boundary, close to half and half. So as I mentioned, we're working through that EIS, that draft EIS stage. Once we have the draft EIS goes out for public review, that the state clearinghouse will have a public hearing. Different than these public meetings we've been holding, this will actually be a public hearing. We would have a hearing officer and have a hearing officer's report following those, following that public hearing.
I
Harold,
believe Chairman Solomon has-
when you expect that to happen?
I'm hopeful that it'll be in the first, I'm saying the first quarter of next year. So pretty close. I think we're getting very close.
Any other questions for Mr. Brady? Okay, well, I want to thank you for continuing to keep us updated and informed about these IBTs that are coming into in process and various steps along the way. And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
We very much appreciate the time that water allocation gives to the subject. So I would like to take the opportunity here to introduce our new, we have an IBT coordinator, Maya Holcomb. So we're super excited that Maya's joined the team.
Welcome.
For this. Yeah, please, if you get a chance, speak to her on your way out.
Okay,
But thank you, everybody. See you.
thank you. Okay, that concludes the information items for today. We'll turn to Ms. Richard Rogers for director's remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll have more complete remarks for the full MC tomorrow, but I do want y'all to know, as you're aware, our response recovery to Helene has been a top priority for us. Over 800 public water supply systems have been impacted. More than 263 wastewater systems have been impacted. And our staff has done a remarkable job to help these facilities get back online. Provide a little more detail tomorrow regarding that as well. New staff coming in, certainly welcome new staff. I will also mention that for the first time since I've been in this role, we're down to 50 vacancies in our division. When I came in about 3 years ago, it was 128. So we're making significant progress, and it really does help to have supervisory positions filled. And I think we're starting to get pretty well staffed up and feeling good about where we are, and are much appreciative of all the work the staff does. And hopefully we'll be able to get at it a little better now with a more fully staffed group. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rogers. Are there any comments from committee members at this time? If not, I'll adjourn the Water Allocation Committee meeting is adjourned.